So as we get ready to tonight's forum, we will be taking some questions from the floor. There'll be two people circulating around, one Brian and Scott, with paper and pencil. If you have a question, please single to one of them, and they'll be happy to provide you paper, pencil, and they'll bring forward a question to myself, and we can ask that to the group in front of us. And please keep in mind, we are here to be respectful and to listen to what the candidates have to say. We're not going to be getting into any type of shouting matches. So with that said, perhaps we could do an introduction to all the candidates, perhaps starting with Krystal.
Hi folks, thanks for having me today. My name is Krystal Smith. I am a candidate running with the BC NDP in West Kelowna-Peachland in this area. Really glad to be here. I'm excited about the David Eby plan and the BC NDP. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I went to university in Kelowna at UBC Okanagan and was a student body president there and on the board of governors there. And I've also spent some time working for different advocacy organizations in campaigns and government relations and lobbying government, as well as working with all levels of government, municipal, federal, and provincial, and worked in some ministers' offices, aiding ministers in the current government. Thank you.
Stephen?
Hi, I'm Stephen. I'm a West Sider. I grew up in West Kelowna. I was born in Vancouver, but my parents moved us here when I was 6 years old. So they still live in the same home in Rose Valley that I grew up in. I went to Rose Valley Elementary. I graduated from Mount Bushery Secondary. And then in my senior high year, they closed down George Pringle. So we had two high schools on the west side. The schools merged. That's where I met my wife, Leah. She's here in the back. So we're high school sweethearts. I'm very blessed to be married to Leah for the last 19 years. And we've been one of the lucky ones who's been able to find meaningful work here in the Valley and stay and raise our family. So we've actually never left. So as a result, I've been serving actively in the community for many, many years. I'm a city councilor in West Kelowna, have been for the last 6 years, and I've also been a regional district director with the RDCO. So I've worked with Wayne Carson, who I'm sure you all know, for 5.5 out of the last 6 years, and I stepped down from that in May so that I could focus on running this campaign. But I'm very happy to be here. I was here on Wednesday for a luncheon, so some of you look familiar, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out once again. So thank you.
Thank you. Macklin?
All right. You can hear me all right in the back? Perfect. So yes, my name is Macklin McCall. I'm the candidate for the Conservative Party of British Columbia here in our riding. Myself, I'm born and raised in the Okanagan, born in Penticton, grew up on a family farm in OK Falls, small town, joined the RCMP. My first post was Kelowna. I transferred to West Kelowna and Lake Country as well in my career, so I policed this very community. And yeah, from there, you know, I've done a lot of work here in our community with policing. I've also done stuff with respect to mental health, addiction, homelessness, and of course public safety as an officer. You know, there's basically as responding to calls in the last several years, 4 or 5 years or so. You know, I saw a lot of things firsthand, dealing with issues that the public were facing. And of course, responding to that, I would see things were getting worse and worse for the people I'd interact with. And of course, you know, I tried to find out, well, gee, what's the issue? How can we fix the issue? And it all seemed to me to be political policies, really, that had changed, and they were causing a lot of harm for people. And I was seeing it firsthand. So I thought, well, how can this be fixed? Well, we need someone to get into politics and change the policies to make things a little easier for people in our community and in our province. So I thought long and hard about it, and I thought, you know, I could do more good outside of the RCMP than I could within. So, and we need good people to stand up and do what's right for our province, our community. So I resigned from the RCMP, and last November I ran against another fellow to be it was a nomination to become the candidate. I successfully won that election in our riding, and ever since then I resigned from the RCMP and have been focused fully on this, as I'm very committed to making sure we get common sense change here for our riding and our province. And I'm excited today to tell you a lot about what the Conservative platform is, and happy Thanksgiving, by the way. And that's me in a nutshell. So thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. We'd like to start off the night talking about road conditions, just because we've all driven here already. The big question being, to everyone, that Westside Road has long been recognized as a dangerous route. And while safety and road widening has improved in areas, road maintenance remains a problem. Most recently, we've had crack repairs, and we also have potholes and poor snow plowing. What steps would you take to improve road conditions on Westside Road, given that the Westside Road falls under provincial jurisdiction? Maybe start with Macklin.
Sure. So thanks for the question. As many of us here, myself, my wife Megan, and everybody else, I'm sure there's many here that aren't from the community. They've driven in along Westside Road. There's a lot, as you guys know, living out here. Just a week to 2 weeks ago, John Rostat was in town, the leader of the Conservative Party, and I actually took him for a bit of a tour down Westside Road and showed him that, and showed him some of the fire damage. There's a lot to be said with, the additions and expansions and stuff that has happened recently or in the last previous governments. But we need to see more infrastructure, more additions, more safety improvements, this type of thing, and that's important. And one thing that the Conservative Party is focusing on is infrastructure in British Columbia. And that's important because if you improve infrastructure, roadway reliability and safety will improve as well, and you can ensure that West Side Road and other roads in this province get more attention and are safer for us to travel. And thank you. That's my response.
Thank you.
My turn. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you for the question. So Westside Road is one of the most dangerous roads in Canada and in all of BC. My wife and I, we've looked at properties out here many times, and one of the reasons we actually haven't purchased out here, because we do like the more rural living and lifestyle. We have 16 and 18-year-old, and it's not a road we're comfortable having our kids drive every day because it's that unsafe. So we've seen investment pulled strategically since the time of Christy Clark being our MLA here, and we need to re-engage that investment. I think what it's about priority. So what we have to do, and we do this in City Council, we set strategic priorities annually, and what this government needs to do is determine what is a priority and does this meet that quota, and I would say it absolutely does. And it's not just major structural repairs. Like as we were driving, I got to ride shotgun on the way out here. So I'm leaning over in the passenger seat and I'm looking like, holy smokes. Like it is absolutely ridiculous. The road is eroding back under itself, and major changes need to occur because it's a life safety issue. And there are thousands of people out West Side Road. But more importantly, there are hundreds of children that hop on a school bus every single day and ride out to West Kelowna. Thank you. And, and we'll talk about that later too in some other questions, I think. But we have to improve that road network so that people can move safely through the communities. And then it's not just structural repairs, though. The crack filling program, the asphalt management plan, we're not doing enough to keep it safe. I was actually out here a couple of weeks ago when we were looking at the crack filling they've done over by the transfer station. I mean, it's a spongy material that they're putting down, and it's actually, when you drive on it, it's like being on snow and ice. And so if you're riding a motorcycle, it's extremely dangerous. So we have to change the way that we're approaching the program as well to make this road safer. It's a huge priority.
Yeah, so I drove out here today, and I've driven the road a couple times. It is a beautiful road and a very, very technical road, and we are seeing some of that fall away, as Stephen was pointing out. If elected as an MLA for this area, I would work tirelessly to ensure that we get this road upgraded. And the BC NDP so far has been upgrading roads across the province, and I really hope to see this one happen next.
Thank you. Staying on the same topic of roads, with West Side Road being dangerous, our community is all too familiar with ICBC. Needless to say, there are a few deer impacts every year. ICBC has over 5,000 employees, yet residents here in our area wait over 5 weeks for a damaged vehicle to be assessed by a repair estimator. How would you improve ICBC's performance, and do you support allowing private insurance competition? Perhaps start again with you, Krystal.
I would say David Evie and the BC NDP, the enhanced care model for car insurance has cut car insurance rates by $500 for folks, and is really making it more affordable. There's issues with ICBC, and there's mechanisms to engage with our ICBC as well as with the government, your MLA or the government of the day, if it's not the current MLA, to fix those issues. And we always should be doing that. But moving to a conservative John Rustad approach of a private insurance model isn't going to keep life affordable. And I don't think that that's the way to move forward. I think that we need to continue to work with our public services and continue to make them better. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I definitely do support the private model. I think competition in the marketplace improves the offerings that somebody, that a business can provide. And I know, like, if I'm a journeyman carpenter by trade, so if I'm the only builder in the North West Side, I'm doing real well because you don't have any other options. But competition makes me work harder for your business. And so I think that's a good thing. I think having a crown insurer is fine because you want to make sure that everybody has access to insurance. But some people want that option to seek private insurance. And I think there's another issue with ICBC as well, which is no-fault insurance. And in my opinion, no-fault insurance artificially lowers the premiums for you and I at the expense of those that are critically injured. So I have a personal experience with this. We have, my in-laws were in a serious rollover accident about 6 weeks ago. And watching, I mean, thank God they're okay. They were cut up, bruised up, beat up, but and the car was written off. However, watching their experience, it has been nothing short of a nightmare. I mean, you write off the vehicle, so you get a poor evaluation of a payout on that vehicle, and then there's no fault, so you have to pay the full deductible. And then you go buy another used vehicle to replace it, something that fits your budget, and then you got to pay PST on that used vehicle. And then you have 12 weeks now to fully recover under this no-fault insurance model. And it's really inappropriate. So if at the end of 12 weeks you still need care, you have to go back on bended knee begging to the government for care on a monthly basis. And that's just not going to work. And I really do believe we need to change that model. It's been tried. It's not working. It's time to change it.
Thank you. Macklin?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, you know, I've dealt with a lot of collisions as a police officer in my career. One thing that's always been an issue for people has just been interacting with ICBC. There's always been kind of concerns, and that was before the NDP made it even worse as it is today. So something that's important, and one of our policies on this is really ending the ICBC monopoly. And I think that's important because what it will do is it will ensure that we have, we'll have competition, which will make it a lot more competitive. It will lower prices. It will ensure better options for British Columbia, and it'll provide a better service as well. They'll have to compete and provide a better service to British Columbians. and that's important. And I think it'll be something that helps quite a bit. I've heard a lot of concerns about ICBC over my years as an officer, and they're just getting worse, right? So that should bring some relief, and I'm excited to get started with that and start making progress there. Thank you.
Continuing on the theme of emergency services then, this first question here will be to you again, Mr. Macklin. Local fire departments face high costs for road rescue services following car accidents. These costs are in turn borne by local taxpayers in those fire districts. How would you propose the province, either through ICBC or the Ministry of Transportation or other means, help recover these costs in unincorporated areas?
Thank you for the question. Again, being emergency services, I can use the police kind of experience again. I've been to a lot of collisions and quite a few actually, even on West Side Road in my career. One thing that's important. I mean, we talked earlier here about the maintenance and just the state of West Side Road. Again, there's a bit of a infrastructure need there where it's lacking, needs to be developed, and so on. Rather than just having perhaps a Band-Aid fix here and there sort of thing, I think that we're committed to infrastructure improvement, and one, of course, is our second bridge crossing that we've committed to here in the Okanagan area. And putting funding into infrastructure will alleviate the congestion here in the area on West Side Road, less vehicles, this type of thing, and it will ultimately ensure that there's less collisions and less issues in general, as we just discussed, which will make it better for travel and safety and commerce and so on. So that would be a good way to actually address the root cause and make things better. And I'm excited to get this up and running. I think it's going to do a lot of good, not just for here, but for the region as well. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire on this matter because it is a concern for our community. We've seen fire service costs increase relatively 30% over the last fiscal year, and they're becoming quite a burden in the electoral area. Do you feel that it's appropriate the province should be intervening and supplementing or reimbursing communities who have high traffic car accident risks, who are then having to respond by fire services and in turn the local taxpayers?
Well, I think that it's certainly worth looking at and reviewing. I mean, that's obviously an important thing, and especially it's one thing if you're in a city or municipality versus a rural area. I mean, the costs and taxes and stuff is quite different. I would absolutely commit to reviewing that and looking at that and finding a amicable kind of approach to something like that. I think that does make sense, and it's definitely worth looking at. And I'm committed to working with the people in the community to make sure that there's something, that action can be taken in a direction that's going to be beneficial for the people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would the others like to address the issue?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, gladly.
Okay, I'll be really quick. First off, kudos, hats off to recognize our first responders and firefighters. They do amazing work, volunteer and employed. This issue comes up at UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities, often from different places across the province. And I think it's something that we definitely need to look into and work together for a solution. If becoming a BC NDP MLA here, that would be a top priority for myself, to be working with municipal affairs, transportation, and the Solicitor General to get some movement on that. Thanks. Sorry.
No, thanks. So I think it actually is absolutely essential to look at. So if we're not going to put money and investment into the road network, then and we're having accidents as a result of that disrepair, then absolutely we need to. We see provincial investment and subsidy kicked back when we have a wildfire, for example. So BC Wildfire fights the forest fires here, and then they would bring on local fire departments to help with that cause. And then when we fight fires, say in West Kelowna, we had the McDougall Creek fire last year, you are reimbursed for helping the province fight those fires. And so where we're seeing incidents that are occurring, even if it's members of the community directly as a result of that road network that's been poorly invested in, I think we absolutely need to have that conversation. And I just want to say too, fire departments in rural areas are a fundamental, they're the heartbeat of the community, because they are your expression of local government here on boots on the ground on the scene. And so it's very, very important that we invest in not just recovery costs, but just in our fire departments in general, because there's a lot of life-saving work that happens here out of this hall. And whether it be first response or fighting a wildfire or a structure fire. So I absolutely think that investment is necessary. And it was brought up, so I'm going to mention it. The second crossing somehow came into play in this question. That's never going to happen, you guys. The second crossing built within 8 years is nothing more than a flashy campaign promise that ignores all the deficient infrastructure needs that we have in this community presently and have had for 2 decades. So it's not the way forward, and don't be fooled by that. That's a flashy promise.
Just a moment, please. Because you've now introduced the matter of crossing, and it is a large item in the Conservative platform, I believe this opportunity or this matter deserves a rebuttal from both other candidates. If you'd like to address the issue, Mr. McCall or Ms. Smith.
Well, what I would say is I don't agree with Stephen on this one. I think that in the time frame it takes to actually develop the plan and execute and get input from all invested parties, cities, and so on, and regional district and all this, we already have issues right now in our Highway 97 congestion, these types of things. We're gonna have to do something, I would say, to alleviate that, because it's going to take time to build a bridge, whether you do it today, whether you do it in 5 years, whether you do 10, 20 years. But if we're looking at the kind of projection we're expecting, I mean, it's a beautiful place. Tourists come here. It's a big destination. People are wanting to move here. I've talked to the mayor of Peachland, the mayor of West Kelowna. They're expecting growth. Do we do it now? Do we start looking at it now, or do we do it 20 years from now and just kick the can down the road? I think having a conversation and looking into this is definitely worthwhile, and I think it's important. And I can say I've gone to over 10,000 houses now, door knocking throughout the riding. I've talked to a lot of people, and the highway congestion and regional issues in terms of highway is an issue. So do we just kick it down the road and wait 10, 15, 20 years to address it, or do we start looking at the issue now before it gets even worse?
Okay, so the Ministry of Transportation has recently done a study saying that this will not be alleviating much congestion in the cities on either side of the bridge. So I don't think it's the right promise for people right now. I think we need to invest money into services that matter for people, like housing and healthcare.
Thank you. Stephen, if you want to just respond to that.
Yeah, I'll just respond to it quickly. So Highway 97 is a provincial highway that runs, it's the main corridor through our community. On this riding, West Kelowna-Peachland, we have at-graded intersections at almost every crossing on Highway 97. It's extremely dangerous. We see a lot of incidents occur at these crossings. We have been lobbying as not just a city, but a regional district and Peachland as well for these intersection improvements for decades. Currently, we have Westlake Road, which is by the Cal Tire, and we have Bushery Road by the Friends Pub in for preliminary design with the province, with Ministry of Transportation. They're actually at land negotiation stage on the Bushery property. Those are going to be full interchanges, just like you see at Snena Road as you kind of cross over to Westside Road. That's what we need across this community. And those investments take a significant amount of time to come to the community. We have intersections at Bartley, which is the one beyond, and then Daimler. Daimler's a very strategic intersection that's very dangerous. We have a middle school on one side and a high school on the other side, and we have kids crossing there every single day at an at-grade controlled intersection on Highway 97. These are priorities that come into play long before a second crossing. Does it mean we don't plan for a second crossing? We should know where that location is. And I'll give you a little bit of background here too. In 2015-16, I was on the second corridor crossing study with the Ministry of Transportation and Fire Chief Brolin as a representative for West Kelowna. We had identified 3 crossings on a map at that point, and the reason it was shut down at the time was because the municipalities weren't on board. This promise that has been made without consultation of the regional district, City of West Kelowna, West Bank First Nation, or the City of Kelowna. We have to know where that crossing is and identify the opportunity so that we can accommodate community planning to achieve that purpose. But in the meantime, we need a corridor that moves safely and efficiently. We have a bridge that allows a third lane going northbound, and with a pedestrian cantilever that can be added. It was designed for that. And there's opportunities to remove lights on the Harvey end of Kelowna. So there's a lot of options that we can do to reduce congestion and get people moving. And it's about safety, and it's about not ignoring the priorities we have in front of us right now.
We'd like to stay on the same matter of infrastructure, and one of them now being water treatment, water systems. Water treatment standards are becoming more and more stringent, and our local governments are facing costly upgrades. The question is two-part. Would you support lowering water standards to previous standards, say in the 2010s, to reduce tax burdens on local taxpayers who are required to fund these water system upgrades? Or how would you propose reducing upgrade costs? If we can start with Ms. Smith.
Well, water upgrades, I don't think that we won't make changes to the water treatment standards that would put pressure on healthcare and safety of the public. I don't think that's anything anybody would want. We could see people falling sick. We could see contaminated water. We could see something, unfortunately, like we're seeing in West Kelowna right now with some concerns over water. We're going to take actions to make sure that communities have safe access to drinking water and secure, sound water.
Thank you. Mr. McCall.
So water is, clean drinking water is a very important thing in our society, obviously, and we see a lot of issues, with water, as Krystal just said, the West Kelowna, the treatment and stuff that's been happening over the years. Important thing is often we see water development and upgrades and this type of thing. They become kind of restrictive, cost restrictive for municipalities to develop public buildings, residential, and so on. The cost of upgrading it reduces the ability for a municipality to continue building and so on. So one thing that our party is committed to doing and has committed to doing this is that we've pledged to fund $1 billion in British Columbia of sewer and water upgrades to help reduce the cost of that in terms of, which will allow municipalities to not have a project, let's say, that they want to develop, and they get half done and go, well, the water and sewage is so much that now we have to push it back more time or scrap it together. So that should go a long way in addressing the cost of water. And I think it's going to be something that's going to be helpful, not just here, but across British Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is actually a bit of a difficult question because I don't think any of us are at the position where we've been able to qualify what an appropriate water standard would look like in a reduced fashion. So, but one thing I do know is that life is getting more and more expensive, and part of that is because we're putting excess rules and regulations on top of just about everything we do. So, if you look past, in the past 2 decades, there's Band-Aid on Band-Aid on Band-Aid on Band-Aid, and we have to actually begin to review what we're doing, even with the BC Building Code. And I think we've made a lot of strides with the STEP Code, and I think building to a STEP Code 3 is a really good building format. But the same with water is, does the ends justify the means? And I think that's the real question to ask is what we're doing, are we getting a net benefit for that? And so we've got to understand why the standards are the way they are. And I know in West Kelowna, like if you were to talk to people in West Kelowna about reducing a water quality standard, it would not be a good thing, because we're dealing with significant issues right now that are coming from a very state-of-the-art brand new water treatment plant. So I think it's understanding, does the ends justify the means, and getting that balance just right.
Thank you. We'd like to speak about childcare for a moment. Rural childcare often operates through unlicensed providers, differs from urban services. How would you ensure that expansion of a $10 a day daycare program under the NDP platform or other affordable childcare programs reach down and truly benefit rural families effectively? Ms. Smith?
Childcare is a game changer for folks. Parents shouldn't have to wonder whether they should be going back to the workforce or if it's more economical to stay home and take care of your child. We've added thousands of childcare spots that are accessible and affordable for folks across the province. And we're starting to see some good results. So specific to rural areas, like leveraging school spaces and using staff at schools to deliver before and after childcare is really important, as well as partnering with regional districts, nonprofits, and municipalities to create some spaces. We've also have a capital fund of about $500 million for building new facilities that we would like to see happen. And we work with nonprofits and community groups to establish those concrete buildings for folks to house childcare. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. And so I don't know that childcare always has to be bricks and mortar buildings built by the government. I think private childcare exists, and I think there's wonderful models in West Kelowna too, where we have residential day homes. Where, and in fact, I met with someone just a month ago via City Council, where we've talked about they want to buy a home in a community, an existing neighborhood, and they actually they're going to live on site, but they want to operate it as a daycare throughout the day. And so they've got to come forward to council for that variance. But there's models like that can work. We've seen it happen in Kelowna a number of times. We have a couple in West Kelowna already as well. And so if there are, qualified daycare professionals out here in the rural areas, then we should absolutely be able to partner with them on affordable and subsidized childcare, because that's important. Now, I also know, talking with parents, a lot of parents want childcare services actually closer to where they work. So, if they're driving from North Westside all the way into Kelowna, they would actually prefer to have their child a little bit closer to them in case something happens. And so I think it's understanding, where the needs are and where that placement of dollars is best utilized. But I don't see why we couldn't have qualified childcare professionals out here and subsidizing that as well. A lot of, families, if you're, deciding to enter the workforce again, and 80% of your income is going to go to childcare, that's a really tough thing. It's almost not worth doing that. And so we've got to make it work for families, and we've got to support children and families. It's one of the most important things we can do.
Thank you. Mr. McCall?
So childcare is very important. My wife actually has been in childcare for I don't know how many years, long time. So I get to hear a lot of what's going on in that world, and it's important. And of course, there's different challenges, I guess, out in a rural setting versus an urban setting. one thing I think that would be very helpful is, we need to remove the kind of stigma, basically, of private providers, and this will allow for more rural child care. Will be able to child care in general will be able to happen more if we allow for more of that to grow and prosper. I think that's important to give more options for parents, because with things the way they are with affordability and so on, you don't want to have to drive so much further and then go the other direction for your work. So especially in a place like this, right? You've got Kelowna, you got Vernon. If a child's got an option more local, that's a savings for the whole family. So I think that's important. And I hear it all the time about childcare, a lot of the issues from my wife, and also going door to door, talking to people as well. So it's something I think is important, and I'm looking forward to addressing this issue in Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the discussion then of expansion of infrastructure or expansion of housing for family needs, both the NDP and Conservative parties are campaigning on a platform to spend tax dollars to fix the affordable housing problem. These programs are primarily targeted towards municipal centers. Cities often dismiss rural growth as urban sprawl. This is to the detriment of rural economies. Do you support residential growth in rural areas? And if so, how would you promote housing developments in rural electoral areas? If I may, Mr. Johnston?
Sure, thank you. So this is an interesting question. I would love feedback from rural residents on this after, because I actually get a real mix when I talk to rural residents about actually whether or not they want residential growth in the rural areas. So but I do think that, from a municipal perspective, we set a growth boundary so that we're focusing our infrastructure needs and demands on areas that are closer to a town center. But in the rural sense, that's a little bit different, right? On the regional district, not long before I stepped down, we had a file come forward for Valley of the Sun, and they're trying to develop a parcel. I believe it's about 60 or 80 acres off to the right. And I thought the proposal was quite reasonable. There's a water system in there that can support the new development. They were looking for smaller lots because a type 1 system typically needs, I think, about a hectare size lot to be able to put a type 1 septic field in. But what they were proposing was a type 2 or 3, which is about a third the size and incredibly efficient compared to that type 1. And I don't see why we can't, as a government, pivot and say, well, hey, if we've got innovation and technology that's supporting growth, especially in rural areas, why are we not interested in seeing that move forward? And as we look to building models that are a little bit more net zero, it actually begins, if we think about it, it's less reliance on a centralized system. So whether it be power supply or sewer, if you've got these really highly efficient septic fields and you've got the ability to be, a bit net zero or off grid with your power source, I think there's unique and innovative options coming that are going to allow building in rural areas to be a lot more beneficial and a lot more reasonable. Now, again, come talk to me after. I want to know how you feel about that, because I don't get the sense from a lot of people I talk to that they want to see mass development into the rural areas. So I'd love to hear more from you on that after.
Thank you. Mr. McCall?
So, what I found growing up in a small town, I've lived in West Kelowna for a lot of years. I personally, at one point, my wife and I were saying, it'd be nice, let's buy a place outside of the city. There are people that do want to move out to the city and some that love the city. So I think that what's important is if someone does want to build out in a rural area, you don't have the stuff at the disposal as you would maybe in a municipality, in an urban center. So I think the important thing is we need to get BC building again. And we just need to get, build houses, get shovels in the ground, get rid of the red tape and the bureaucracy. That would go a long way in making it easier. I would get rid of a lot of the cost. A lot of these things are really, they're slowing down the builds. They're costing way more money. The materials costing more, and then of course you've got the carbon tax and all these other taxes that make the cost go up even more. If we can streamline that and cut that back, that should go a long way in actually getting houses built quicker and cheaper, and that's important. And that'll affect not just someone building a house. That'll affect maintenance of a house, selling houses, the tax on it, all that stuff, and it'll go a long way. And I think it's an important thing to target. And I've had a lot of people tell me how that's affecting them, just the affordability of a house, but also, yes, the building of one as well. So I'm looking forward to working on that, because it's going to affect not just a couple people, and it's going to help a lot of people, anyone that has a house, really. So it's going to be important. And thank you.
Thank you.
So, sorry.
Are you not? Sorry.
I haven't. Is it okay if I do?
If you would like, my
Okay.
apologies, please.
Yeah, so, living in rural BC, especially in the Okanagan, beautiful. People are attracted to it all the time. People talk about wanting to do it all the time. People in rural areas face some big challenges, and a lot of them we're talking about right here tonight. Infrastructure challenges, road challenges. Supporting rural communities is vital to the whole province. Everybody prospers when rural communities are doing well. We need to support great jobs out in rural communities. Some remote work that the BC Public Service is doing is a lot of the public servants can now live remotely. But we have a pretty robust plan that is going to deliver 300,000 new middle income houses, and that's what experts are saying. And those are across BC, not just in urban centers. They're in rural centers as well. And moving forward, the Conservatives in Rustad have decided that they are going to cancel that plan and tear it up. So I'm hoping that we will stick with that plan. It's going to build housing throughout British Columbia. People always ask me if it's just in urban centers, and it is not. So we need to do a bunch of stuff to support that infrastructure, but we also need to support funding for building homes in communities that we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to make sure we pivot back to focus on rural areas, and particularly the Northwest side. So on that matter, I'd like to pivot towards schools, education, and busing. To the frustration of many West Side parents, current school district boundaries require that children attend school in West Kelowna. Historically, children in the area could attend school in Vernon. However, over the years, children have been progressively pushed towards West Kelowna, forcing them to bus on a longer route on a dangerous road. Would you support a study to realign school boundaries and send students to Vernon? If I may start, Mr. McCall? No, it's okay, Ms. Smith.
Okay, yeah, of course. Yeah, I would be an advocate for this study. I would support a study going forward as rural areas and communities grow. We often see the shifts of boundaries needing to happen. It's happened elsewhere in the province in the past. If elected, I would definitely be banging on the minister's door to say, let's get this done, and let's talk to the folks in the community about where they want to see their children going to school. For sure. You would also need to do a bunch of consultation with your elected school boards as well, which if this is an issue that you guys have been working on for a while, I've heard it come up. I've gotten a couple emails about it, and we talked about it earlier today. I know you reached out to your elected school officials. Thanks.
Mr. McCall?
Yes, thank you for the question. This is, I've heard several people talk about this locally, about the issue with the schools, and it's kind of a unique area with as you said, North Westside and everything here. One thing that I think is really important to take away from all this is which is a really big position for us with the Conservative Party, is that we're going to be supporting parents and parents' choice, and parents should be able to decide where their kids are getting schooling and what education they're getting as well. And so, they should be supporting that, and government should be providing reasonable funding for that as well. And I think that's important, because there's other issues as well, I think, that go in the parent world as well with supporting parents. I think it will go a long way, and I'm excited to see that take off. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Thanks. Yeah, I've been erring on the side of trying to stay focused on the question. I missed something in the housing thing, so talk to me after. But with the schooling, absolutely. And it's not just the schooling. It's this study is actually about understanding the service boundaries for the regional areas. And it's about aligning them with the expectation or the reality, really, of where you're receiving services from. So if you're looking for, healthcare services, schooling, we're sending kids to West Kelowna on that dangerous road that we've already talked about, when you could go that way a lot more safely. But you're also, if you need healthcare, you're likely going to the emergency room in Vernon. You're likely getting an ambulance that comes from Vernon. You're likely getting a police response from Vernon. And really, it's those service boundaries that aren't lining up with the traditional boundaries of the regional district, right? So, and then we look at across the bridge, we've got Big White. Everyone thinks that's part of the Central Okanagan, but it's not. It's actually part of the Kootenay Boundary Regional District. And so I think having a look at the service boundaries and how they pertain to the regional district boundaries is really, really important work. And I do know that this community has been asking for that for a long time, and you've not been getting the traction that you deserve in that. And so do I support that? Wholeheartedly. And will I work with Wayne Carson to make that happen? You bet I will. And I do believe that it's been swept under the rug more than it should. And I think it's time to bring those concerns right to the legislative floor and get some action on this file.
We're going to take just a brief moment here. You're good? Having introduced the subject of governance, this is a major issue for our communities. So I'd like to pose the next question to all the candidates. After 2 governance studies, both funded by the province, North Westside residents have consistently expressed a desire for change in our local government. With many of our services, including policing, hospitals, and ambulance, coming out of Vernon and Armstrong areas, and given our close shopping and employment ties with Vernon, Armstrong, Salmon Arm, the latest study recommended exploring a move from the regional district of the Central Okanagan to the North Okanagan Regional District, which would see the North Westside joining the Regional District of the North Okanagan as an independent electoral area. The next steps in this process is a feasibility study. Will you support funding this study, and how will you advocate for this moving forward? If I may, Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I'll be an advocate for this study. I spoke a little bit about with you folks in the room earlier today. I think everybody is eager to get this feasibility study done. So if elected, I will definitely be banging down the door for you. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll be quick, 1,000%.
So yes, I've talked quite a bit extensively here with Wayne Carson about the issue. I'm aware of how important it is for the area. I know that there's still studies and stuff obviously going on with it. And my goal 100% for here and for the whole riding is to serve the people of the riding and to work for the people. And so I'm really excited to become the MLA to do just that and work for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. With respect to the economy in rural areas, the most recent 2025-2026 provincial budget projections are nearing a $7 billion deficit. Do you support eliminating a budget deficit? If so, where would you make spending cuts? If I may, to Ms. Smith.
Sure, you may. So we'll be returning to a balanced budget over time. We've done a lot of work to help the economy grow, but right now is not the time to cut the services that people need and depend on. A lot of people have been asking for more services in this room tonight and hoping to get those. People are having a hard time with affordability, and healthcare is also a major issue. Housing is an issue. Right now is not the time to cut those services. BC's finances are very strong. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratios in the country, and we're the only province with a AAA credit rating. And investing in our people and in our infrastructure is going to continue to grow British Columbia and make it better. And that will continue to grow our economy, and then eventually we will move back to having some balanced budgets. We have had balanced budgets in the past. Neither ourselves nor the Conservative Party this time is presenting a balanced budget for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston?
Thank you. So I was formerly with the BC United Party, and we were the only party that actually had identified balancing the budget. I'm a municipal councillor, and I've been a regional district director. I'll tell you a secret. We don't get to run deficits. We always run balanced budgets. So I'm not sure why the province and the feds do this all the time. So I think a balanced budget is absolutely essential. So where would you cut money? You go through each department. If you hire me as a CEO or a general manager for your company, I don't know before you hire me where I need to cut it, but I know that that's the first task at hand, is to identify where the waste is and trim the fat and make the organization lean. So you find the waste and you cut it. We'll talk about healthcare real quick. Healthcare is really important to all of us. Oh, I'm talking about the cuts. You want to leave it? Okay. Well, we'll cut stuff out of healthcare, but it's not what you think. It's just the waste. And then having the strong economy is all of the things that we hope to provide in a country like Canada, a province like BC. It's predicated on a strong economy, which we do not have right now. And so there's a whole bunch of ways, and I won't get off topic, but I'd love to talk to you about economy later. And I hope a question comes up on that, because that's really an important piece.
Thank you. Mr. McCall.
So thanks for the question. Budget's an important issue. Obviously, the NDP, David Eby, has really doubled our debt. It's the worst debt we've ever seen in this province. One thing I think that's really important is when the Conservative Party, if we have the honor of forming government, we will dramatically. The spending has been dramatically expanded by the NDP, and we will review that, all the expense, and see where it's just balloons into something that's not needed, and there's excess and reduce that to put more money back into the pockets of British Columbians, and really we have to get the economy back roaring again as half of the other half of the equation with this. We have to get our small businesses up and running, resource development, and all, industry, get people investing back in British Columbia, which will also help balance the budget as well when we have that money coming back in. So I think there's a two-prong approach. It's not just cutting it and what are you going to cut, because we don't want to. We want to make BC better, put BC first and make it better than it certainly is right now. And that's really our plan, is to really take a balanced approach with both and prioritize prioritize things that are important to British Columbians. Thank you.
So we will move into healthcare on that subject. Healthcare costs have risen from $19.2 billion in the fiscal budget 2015-2016 to a projected $32.9 billion in the 24-25 budget. This is an increase of over 70% in less than 10 years. How would you reduce healthcare costs while improving care standards? And do you support reinstating private surgical clinics? Mr. Johnston.
Thank you. Okay, I'm glad I waited. Thank you. So in healthcare, there's a stat that in our neighboring province of Alberta, in the healthcare system, you have 7 vice presidents that kind of run that healthcare institution and help keep it, operating at really actually and achieving better results than we're achieving here in BC. But guess how many we have in BC? 73. So we have 73 employees that are, living off the fat of the hog and really getting worse results than we've ever had before. So if you're talking about healthcare cuts, a lot of people think when we're cutting taxes, we're going to actually cut services. No, we're going to cut waste. There's a lot of waste that exists, and I can tell you, people that are making $250,000 to $450,000 as a VP in a healthcare system, they're not providing boots on the ground service to you. And that's actually why you have worse results than ever with spending almost 70% more in 7 years or over 10 years. And we need to really look at where the waste exists in government. And it's not just healthcare. When it comes to, the short supply of doctors, we have to hire back healthcare workers. And I know the NDP will say that they've done that, but the methodology that they've used to bring people back, it's restrictive, and it doesn't matter because a lot of those healthcare workers are gone. They've left to Alberta or to other provinces, or they've just said, hey, I'm out of the profession, I'm doing something different. So we have to identify the need that we have in the healthcare system and make sure we're graduating enough professionals to meet that demand. And that's a really important piece of the puzzle. We have an urgent primary care center in West Kelowna, which we're fortunate to have. The problem is it's not staffed well, and the hours are terrible. I just was by there on Friday, and I said it was kind of a fitting color they chose. There's an orange paper on the window that says, we've got no doctors today, it's closed early. And I was talking to one of the neighboring businesses, and they said, we go out every Friday to check, and usually on a weekend, specifically a long weekend, you see a notice like that. And we have to make sure we have healthcare professionals. If you are moving to a new community, there's an analogy that Michael Humer likes to use, and you've got a child, you would expect that child gets plugged into the public education system. That's just the expectation. If you move to a community and you need a doctor, you should get one. And we need to make sure that we have a supply to meet that demand.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, so we are proposing a full and complete review of health authorities with the goal of driving down costs and streamlining overhead and administration and putting that money back into frontline workers. Privatizing healthcare is not going to fix that. It's going to have 2 competing systems that are going to be fighting over the same healthcare workers in BC, and people who can afford to access the healthcare will get it, and then people who can't afford it and are in the public system will be waiting in line and waiting longer. So too many people are struggling to find a family doctor. A lot of people have been connected, but there's a lot more work to do. We've hired 800 family doctors. We've hired 6,300 nurses to start bringing capacity into the system and hiring more folks. By the end of 2025, it's projected that everybody on the BC Health Connect and everybody who's stood up and said, hey, I need a doctor, I want one. If you want a doctor and haven't signed up for that already, I would encourage you to. But the capacity now, the people that have said, we need a family doctor, we want it, we should have everybody connected by 2025, by the end of that year.
Thank you. Mr. McCall.
Thank you. That's a great question. One of our there's a lot to be said about healthcare, obviously, in British Columbia right now. One of what our model is that we want to bring in is called patients first model, and that's literally putting patients first rather than what we kind of see with healthcare, where it's run more like a business rather than prioritizing the patient's needs. So, with that, the big feature with that is we want to have what we have now is like a one-payer system where you have the government. Sorry, I should probably do this, I guess. Have the government, and a patient comes into the system, they go to a hospital, and they're in the hospital getting their treatment, and that's what we have now. What we want to do is have a one-payer system, have the same system, but there's such a backlog, and we need that addressed right now, not a month, a year, 5 years down the road. We need change now in this. So we would have that system, and the patient would make the decision if they would like to go with a single payer system, the government paying for them to go to a non-government facility to receive treatment, still paid publicly through the single payer system, but it gives the option and cuts down the times and puts the patient first rather than profit, which I think is a very important thing. And also, we want to focus on hiring back doctors and nurses, getting them staffed. We have a shortage, and it's a crisis right now in British Columbia. Invest in frontline workers rather than top heavy as we see in British Columbia. We need to take that money out of people that are pushing paper upstairs that you never see to the doctors, nurses, and technicians and everyone that operates the hospital or facilities to get more people to do the work that we need as citizens. And keeping emergency rooms open. Some 8 to 12 hours sometimes. I've heard in the Lower Mainland and some places, these are busy hospitals where people could go in for anything. They're in labor, and you got to sit there in a waiting room. That's too much. And of course, cutting the wait times is a very important thing. So that's in a nutshell. That's the patients first model that I think would go a long way to alleviating a lot of the issues that we're seeing in a short order here in our province. Thank you.
We'll continue on healthcare, but at first, still to hold your feet to the fire on the issue of reinstating private surgical centers. The NDP have made it very clear under the Horgan EB. NDP have made it very clear during their tenure and have championed the closing of private surgical centers in the Lower Mainland. One of the largest users of those private surgical centers was WCB. It enabled WCB to get employees who were injured back to work faster. That path for surgical repair is now closed. Do you support reintroducing private surgical clinics to British Columbia? Mr. McCall.
Well, I think it's kind of consistent with the first answer I gave, where it's, if someone goes through the medical system, and the system we want to bring with the patients first model would be in that someone goes in, and whatever that treatment might be, whatever the doctor says, this is what you're going to be doing, this is what was required, there'll be the system that we currently have, and there'll be the option of going through a non-government facility, if I can call it that, and getting the treatment that the patient wants rather than being shipped out of country like the NDP are doing on the patient's dime, by the way. And so I think that's consistent with that and other treatment. That's the model we're looking to develop here in British Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston.
So I don't think private care is the enemy here. I think it's the fact that we're in a situation that has been broken through decades of mismanagement to where it's now being blamed on these private healthcare facilities. And the problem with that is, we don't actually have an equal access to healthcare opportunity here. So if you're injured in WCB, which was mentioned, you're going to get pushed to the front of the line. If you're a professional athlete, you're probably going to get service a little bit quicker. And I don't see why, and this is outside of healthcare, but other services that you require too adjacent to health. A lot of people do try to find opportunities outside of the province. So whether it be a medical holiday where they go for dental work, we're not receiving the care. So if we fix the model so that you need care, then the private institutions aren't a problem, because you can go there if you want, because maybe you're receiving a higher standard of care. So I think it's an easy target to say that this is the problem. And I actually think, so here's a crazy thing. So if you live in Alberta, or your primary residence is in Alberta, you can come access these clinics whenever you want, if you're out of province, out of country. So, but we don't allow our own people to access it. And sometimes, and the reason why people want access to private is because they freaking need care right now and they can't get it. So that's why, and I don't know that if we can't fix the model, why we should take that away. And I understand that there's this, worry that we're gonna have doctor shortages as a result. So get a program in place that says, hey, we have Canadians studying abroad who have gotten they've gotten licensed as a practitioner, maybe in the UK, Germany, India. They want to come back to practice medicine here. They can't. We have nurses who can't hop back to this province from other provinces in this country. So we have to have a qualification system similar to, I'm a journeyman carpenter, like a Red Seal that says, hey, you can qualify here if you're a professional, and we're going to get you back boots on the ground and working here. I think that's what we need to do to fix healthcare.
We're going to take just a brief moment here. Just a brief moment. Okay. Resuming. 2 final questions to address. First one being COVID and the second being carbon tax. COVID policies, expanding on healthcare. Bringing back nurses and doctors and healthcare professionals who refused not to get a shot. How do you see those individuals reintegrating into the medical system? And would you reintroduce nurses, doctors, medical professionals, and restore them at the same seniority that they were prior to being booted out? If I may, Ms. Smith.
So professionals are coming back to work. Like, the ban has been lifted, so that's already happening.
So to my knowledge, the new regulations that someone would have to comply with to come back to work basically effectively replace the mandate by making you prove efficacy or immunity. And I actually don't think it's doing anything to inspire people to want to come back to work. So yes, I would absolutely reinstate workers back to the seniority they had prior to. Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. McCall?
So just to touch on something that Krystal said as well, with the change of the wording with the mandates and all this stuff that happened not too long ago, there may very well be some nurses coming back, but I have personally spoke to some here in our riding that still haven't gone back because of the wording that's currently in place. So there are people still that are very senior, lots of skills and training. I can't even explain what their title is because I don't know what they do, and I'd destroy it if I tried to explain it. So there are still people that haven't, and our party would absolutely bring back nurses that were fired for a medical decision, and I haven't heard it discussed in our party, but it's definitely, I would say, worth considering an option of where they would be if they would come back, because we certainly need these nurses back, A, to have the bodies to do the work, but also B, the skills that we're losing that they've developed over X amount of years in their career that we don't have. That would be, in my view, it's a priority to, if we could get that skill back, not just hire bodies. And it's a double whammy, right? Not just the bodies, but you get the skill back. So I think that would be certainly worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last question is one on the carbon tax. Rural areas face an overwhelming disproportionate cost when it comes to transportation and the carbon tax that we pay on fuel because of our distance from municipal areas. What is your party's plan to deal with carbon tax? If I may, Mr. McCall.
So very simply, the Conservative Party of British Columbia's plan is to scrap the carbon tax and put the money back in people's pockets. It'll go a long way at dealing with a lot of, as you said, just the fuel and traveling, but it affects really everything in our lives right now. So it's important. That's probably one of our top things that people are excited about, and I'm excited to get to Victoria and start working on that right away. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
So we have a really strong climate action strategy, one of the strongest in the country, with the BC NDP and the Green Party that built it. The carbon tax is a decision that is federal, so it's still in place. There has been decisions in Ottawa that have really damaged the consensus around the carbon tax. So I know that David Eby and the BC NDP will be really looking at that, because people are really struggling. So, but we need to, and we will eliminate that if we can with Ottawa. If Ottawa says that, yes, you will not be collecting, you don't have to collect a carbon tax anymore, we will continue to make sure that the big polluters pay, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely in favor of scrapping the carbon tax. I think it's a punishing tax that, we seem to love to punish hardworking British Columbians here and Canadians. And I think it's time to set the record straight and say, hey, in a province where so many of us are surviving, we need to start thriving. And so that means bringing back our natural resources, putting them to work for us. We have, for example, mining permits across this province that are being stalled out under the guise of environmental protection and things like carbon taxation. And at the meantime, we're actually going and accessing those same minerals and resources from nations across the world that have horrible ethical and environmental standards. And so we do a lot of pageantry with a carbon tax. We look at wildfire. Wildfire is one of the biggest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions in this province, sometimes, depending on the year, 10 to 20-fold over what we produce in industry. And we need to begin to have better forest management practices and an improved wildfire response to make sure that we are actually making a huge impact there, and at the same time reopening mills and bringing jobs back to BC that support families. And that's where I think it's not just about cutting a carbon tax, it's about bringing those jobs back to BC that were impacted by carbon tax. So yes, it should be gone. And I maybe go a little step further than the BC United Party used to go. I say you just cancel it now and let Justin come collect if he wants it.
Thank you to all of our candidates for your participation this evening. We greatly appreciate you coming so far to the North West Side. We'd like to now close the debate and open to some mingling and introduction to the various participants. So come on out and say hi to everybody in the crowd, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions to have on a one-on-one basis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing? I just wanted to thank these two. It's challenging and hard sometimes to put your name on a ballot and sit up here. I also wanted to thank our MLA for his service. He has been a mentor to all three of us in different ways, and it's nice to see him out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.